Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and to celebrate Leela's winning of the TCEC Swiss number 7, we are having a look at a Leela game. It is, however, maybe not the Leela game that you'd expect. This game was suggested by a neutral viewer who said that this was a fantastic game, and you know he wasn't half right. So this is from the CCC Rating Brawl. That's 1 minute plus 1 second. Equisetum against Leela Zero. And it's a fantastic game. Don't be put off by the fact that it's bullet, 1 minute plus 1 second. With the hardware that the CCC is running, I mean, I'm sure that these engines are calculating more than I do on my machines, so at long time controls. So don't be put off. It is an absolutely fantastic game. How did it all start? Well, it's a 4 knights. In principle, pretty boring, but of course, with the engine opening book, we can do all sorts of nice things. So, Bishop D6, the first unusual line. The book continues D3, A6, Bishop A4. H6, not absolutely necessary. I mean, black's putting the bishop on D6 here in order to protect the pawn on E5. But the idea is, you know, later to move this bishop. Most likely to go castles, rook E8, and then bishop F8, and then either D6 or D5, and maybe, you know, G6 and bishop G7 after. So H6 isn't really necessary. I mean, you could basically just go castles, and if bishop G5, you go bishop E7. Well-known idea in sort of Lopez and Italian games. But okay, you know, this is still the book. So H6, Knight E2. And the idea is straight away the knight's being rerouted round G3 into F5. Nice little soft square there when black's gone H6. And of course with the bishop on D6, it's you know, all looking a little bit awkward for black. B5, bishop B3, and now bishop B7 was the end of the book, I think. I think if Leela had been given free rein, Leela might have played knight A5, just nabbing the bishop pair there. But bishop B7 played, and well, the engines give this about 0.70 for white. So, you know, a good advantage, but nothing that huge somehow. So you'd expect Leela to be able to survive this against Equisetum. Well, we'll see what happened there. So Equisetum played knight G3, very aggressive, obviously going into F5. And here Leela actually played a novelty. So G6 was played in a Title Tuesday game in 2021. Possible, you know, as long as you can get in maybe at some stage bishop F8 to G7, but maybe a little bit awkward. Knight E7 was played also by Glenn Fleer, well-known English player living in France. But that looked a little bit awkward. Knight H4 to cover F5. Knight H4 happened. I think Glenn didn't play G6 because of Queen F3. That probably looked a bit awkward. So he played C5. Knight H5 happened. Takes, Queen takes H5. Rook F8, F4. Looks like things went a little bit wrong there for Glenn. He managed to make a draw against a somewhat weaker player. But yeah, that looked a little bit awkward. So what Leela plays here is a novelty. It's the novelty that all the engines want, which is just to play bishop c5. And it looks a little bit odd to have played bishop d6, bishop c5, but you know, you played bishop d6 just to cover the e5 pawn early on, and now you're just going to move it out and maybe play d5 or d6. So Equisetum played knight f5, which is the most aggressive. Actually, both Torch and Stockfish weren't at all interested in my games in knight f5. They were looking at c3 or castles, but knight f5 feels really natural. And now Leela played the most aggressive move here, which is d5. Amazingly enough, my engines, Torch and Stockfish then, they didn't want d5, although they didn't assess d5 as any worse than their move, really. But what they wanted to play was the move bishop f8. Pretty cool, huh? Bishop d6, bishop c5, bishop f8. And the idea is simply, okay, you've wasted some time, but you're just going to play g6, kick away the knight, play bishop g7, and you're perfectly organized then. And yeah, I mean, this was working out quite decently for black. There was one really nice thing where, I was sort of thinking, okay, well, the engines were looking at A4 in this position. But I mean, what about D4? That's a natural human thing. Black's wasted time. You're going forwards. Let's keep on opening the center. And well, what Torch and Stockfish came up with was gorgeous. It was knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and now g6. Really nice. So, I mean, you're leaving two knights on prise. e4 is also on prise. And, basically, once you take on d4, you'll also be threatened to take on f5 there. So this was the way the engines were seeing it. And now nothing better than a4 and grabbing the b5 pawn in return, and black's doing absolutely fine. I have never seen this type of idea in a Lopez, just taking on d4 like that and leaving the knights and then attacking another one. Quite incredible. Really nice idea. I love those sort of things. That's why you analyze with engines. But d5 is really interesting from Leela, really aggressive as well. So knight takes g7 played. I mean, actually, both Torch and Stockfish wanted to play e takes d5. And then knight e7 is the nice idea. If knight g7, we go king f8, and the knight can't get back to f5. And if you go knight e7, we go queen e7. And, well, we'll be aiming to recapture this pawn later. Yeah, it's kind of feels a little bit fraught for black. This was how the engines were playing it. I mean, you still haven't got that d5 pawn back. But if bishop c5, you go knight c5, and then you're threatening knight b3. You've got rook d8. Yeah, it's one of those positions where I think a human player would have to have analysed this with an engine at home in order to be able to play it. But well, the engines always feel at home, even at 1 minute plus 1 second. So you can probably make a draw from this as black. But knight takes g7 check is what Equisetum played, knight f5, and now black gets d takes e4. And blasting open that centre. Obviously, white doesn't want to take on e4 because you just take on d1 and take on e4, and black's doing really, really well. So white plays the move knight 3h4. And yeah, I mean, this is a really, really sharp position. I mean, at first sight, you just think, well, isn't black just losing here? I mean, we've got ideas like bishop h6 check, surely. This is really, really difficult. But yeah, I mean, black's got a lot of active pieces, a lot of play in the centre, and white's king isn't completely safe itself. So it's all very fraught for black. But actually, the engines think that this is pretty even, not worrying at all. Now, there's one very interesting moment here now. Yeah, it's always those interesting engine moments because the engines, without fail, wanted to play a5, threatening a4. And after a4, they wanted to play knight d4. And the question is, okay, a5, why throw in a5? Why not play knight d4 immediately? And, it's not that that knight d4 is a particularly bad move. However, the key point is that after knight d4, the engines want to play castles here. And they considered that this was 0.66 for white. Yeah, they was looking at e takes d3, queen takes d3, bishop e4 is one possibility, knight e4 is another, bishop e3 with a slight edge for white. I mean, yeah, you're going to play the rook to e1. You're going to be taking some stuff on d4, a little bit loose for black. Although black was actually surviving. So what's the value of playing a5? Well, when you play a5, a4, knight d4, if you go castles now, black's actually got the possibility of taking on b3 and playing e takes d3, which is, obviously better than the line we've just seen. You're going to get in queen d5. The engines thought that this was, all right for white, but I mean, I think you're moving from, all right for black just surviving to all right for white just surviving somehow. I wouldn't fancy this with white somehow, not with the open g file and the g2 pawn weak. So that's really, really nice. I mean, just one of those subtle points, that you just sort of see, well, why would you throw that in? But it's just, in a sort of a sub-variation. The other thing that you'll notice is that in quite a few lines, the ability to play rook a6 to g6 is quite useful. It's not that it's absolutely crucial, but it does mean that you get an awful lot of extra possibilities of playing just because of that possibility. So after knight d4, white took on d4. Bishop takes d4. You don't want to play queen d4. It looks nice, but just bishop e3 covers the threat. Queen d6 castles, and then, well, we've got knight f5s coming in. You don't want to take on e3 because that opens up the f-file. So, yeah, that's not good. So bishop d4 played. Castle kingside, and now rook g8. I love rook g8. I mean, just sort of saying, you want to take the h6 pawn? Go for it, please. And indeed, bishop h6, we just go king e8 with black. And then we've got this idea of knight g4, hitting the bishop on h6 and the queen taking on h4 here. So, yeah, I mean, it's just quite frightening for white there. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to get your pieces exposed. Engines were also looking at d takes e4, first of all. But Equisetum played c3, which is pretty natural. I mean, black's pieces are, coming forwards, but they're not really stable on their squares, especially the bishop on d4. So let's just start getting at these guys and start pushing them back. But Leela doesn't go back. Knight g4. So the idea is takes, queen takes h4, and it actually looks. I don't know if you know the Hans Berliner variation of the two knights, very sharp Italian game opening. It looks very much like that somehow, but well, if you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. But very, very dangerous. So Equisetum didn't want to allow that and played the move knight f5. However, knight f5 is a great little move. It sort of escapes the attack on the queen. Attacking h6, you're attacking d4. You can even have d takes e4. But the key thing is that knight on h4 was defending the pawn on g2. And it's not doing that anymore, which means that black has this resource e3. The board is on fire. I mean, it's often used, that phrase, but I think we can really say that it's true in this position. Bishop on b7 now, rook on g8. It's not clear how you're going to get at it, but you're sure that it's going to be dangerous. But Equisetum just said, okay, well, show me. C takes d4. And yeah, here this is where you just start, looking on how on earth is this not mating with all these pieces looking at g2. But it's pretty, as always, as you'd expect, it's pretty tricky. I mean, if you go something like e takes f2, looking to drive the king into the corner, white just goes rook f2, and then the counterattack starts. Bishop check, king e8. And then you've actually got this move, bishop takes f7 check, which is quite nasty. King f7 will start attacking with queen h5 check. So, yeah, what the engines want, they want this line, which is really cool. Queen h5, knight h3 check, just trying to get the queen away, but we just ignore it. Bishop g2, king to e1, and well, the board is on fire, but yeah, I mean, in principle, the white king does look a lot safer than the black king, and yeah, the engines were winning all this with white somehow. No worries. Knight takes f2 look maybe more interesting, a lot more forcing somehow. So rook takes f2 takes, king f1 was the idea, with the idea of bishop h6 check, and this is where including a5 a4 is useful, because you go rook a6. And the point is, this is not a crucial line, as I said, in all variations. You don't actually need it to get a decent game, but it just makes a lot of extra stuff possible. And here you're just defending the h6 pawn. So if bishop h6, you're willing to sack basically, and then you'll get the queen into h4. It's going to be really dangerous. So queen h5, bishop takes g2, rook f6, bishop h6, king e8, and the chaos continues. But the engines thought that black should be able to get some sort of draw here. It's just there's a nice little draw by repetition if you want. Knight e6, king e8, knight g7, king f8. So yeah, I mean, lots of very interesting stuff there. But not actually necessary, because Leela played the best move, which was the incredible bishop takes g2. No teeing up there. We're just trying to rip the the cover in front of the white king and just kill white basically. And of course, with king g2, we just go knight takes f2, and then we're going to take on d1. What I thought when I was just playing through the game, I thought, ha, don't we have knight g3 in this position? Knight d1, rook f7 check. Ta-tong! But it turns out that after king e8, there's just nothing at all for white. It's just empty threats. Empty threats. So what did Leela do here? What did Equisetum do here, rather? Queen c2 was the idea. Queen c2, what's the idea? Well, you're getting out of the reach of a discovered knight attack. So king g2, knight f2 check will no longer attack a queen on d1. But there's something even more sneaky. This c takes d4 has opened the c file, and white has now got a very unpleasant check on c5. So yeah, really, really nasty. So all of a sudden, black's got to watch out for all of this. Now, the bizarre thing is that there's actually quite a few good moves here. There's bishop h3 was the move that I really thought. I couldn't understand why that wouldn't be decent. And with the idea that if queen c5, we play the gorgeous queen d6. Because obviously, knight takes d6, we've got knight takes f2, checkmate. Yeah, white's best move after here is to go knight g3. We take on f1, you take, king f1, e takes d4, and this is a total mess. But the engines think that that this should end up as a draw with best play. So I mean that move is actually possible. It also came up in a few of the engine games. e2 was very popular in engine games as well. With the idea of queen e2, we go bishop takes f1. So king f1 is necessary. If queen f1, we've got knight e3 check, of course. So king f1, knight h2, rook g1, queen g5 check, and now takes, and queen f5. And after all that excitement, we've got some vaguely, well, not normal, but it ends up being some sort of equalish position here. We get our knight back into play, and what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wouldn't you know it? Equal material. So yeah, I mean, plenty of completely crazy lines there. But what Leela played was absolutely fine. Leela played something different. Played the move queen f6. So hitting the knight on f5 and getting the queen closer to the danger area. Equisetum played queen c5 check here. And I mean, it's worth throwing in that check whilst the king can't escape here. You wouldn't want the king to escape like that. So king e8 played, and now king takes g2. And yeah, you know, the engines are saying here, well, find something for black. Yeah, it's not easy at all. I mean, Leela played e2, which is perfectly decent. Queen f5 was what the engines wanted. Queen c6 check, king e7, queen c7, king f8. And you're trying to escape round here, basically. So the engine sort of thought that this was better. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pawns to 4. But a lot of activity, of course, a big threat of a discovered attack there. King h1, rook af8 takes. And the engines agreed a draw here. Well, human game would still be a little bit unclear, I think. I think all three results possible in a human game. But black's clearly got a lot of counterplay for, you know, for the material. But e2 is very sneaky. We're looking for a knight e3 discovered check here, and then something taking there. And now another incredible move. Yeah, I mean, your rook's on prise, your knight on f5 is on prise, and a discovered attack threatened on the king. What did Equisetum play? Equisetum played the incredible bishop f4 here. Yeah, developing the rooks. So you're getting ready to recapture it, maybe with a rook on f1, and also preparing to block the g file with bishop g3. But I mean, this is amazing, right? What a move, bishop f4. You know, incredible. I think that's going to be the the diagram that I advertised this game with. I mean, after all. So yeah, what did Leela do here? I mean, I think it's around here that Leela started making some mistakes here. I think queen f5 was the move that the engines wanted as well. Queen c6, king e7, and then we get this sort of position. Queen d7 takes h3, rook d4, hg, rook g takes g4. And the engines were making a draw in this position. I mean, I guess they're, you know, you're sort of hitting some pawns and getting some stuff. But, you know, I mean, in a human game, this would be very fraught with the 2 bishops against 2 rooks. I wouldn't really fancy it, which I think shows that probably this move e2 was just doing a little bit too much. E takes f1 was Leela's move. Rook takes f1, and now knight e3 check. And this is the I think the big error It wasn't too late still to go queen takes f5 check, you know, and head for something like this in actual fact. When yeah, the engines were making a lot of draws from this position. White's a little bit better. There's some weak pawns and stuff, but yeah, there's also going to be a lot of weak pawns here. So h3 takes, f3 check is a bit sneaky, looking for king f3, knight h2 check, king g3, knight f6, rook c1, rook b8, and yeah, you know, you've got counterattacks against the weak white pawns. It's going to be all right for black, you know, even if white is a little bit more comfortable there. But Leela went all in, and in all fairness, yeah, at 1 minute plus 1 move, who can blame Leela? Knight e3 check, double check, king h1, knight takes f1. And to be honest, I mean, you would say, after all, what is there, you know, what on earth is could be wrong with you know, the black position here? We're well, a rook for 2 pieces up, and we've got 2 pieces hanging here. I mean, after all, you know, what could be the problem here? But here Equisetum played some quite amazing moves. The first move was a takes b5. A takes b5. What on earth is a takes b5 doing? If you can work out why a takes b5 is played, then give yourself a gold star, because it's not easy at all. So queen f5 was what I was thinking about. I mean, I can understand that that e takes f4, as Leela played, might be a bit risky with a knight on f5 close to the black king. But what about queen takes f5? Well, we're playing the move b6. And can you see what the threat is? Well, there's quite a few threats, but the all-time biggest threat is the move bishop a4 check. That is why you played a takes b5, to free up that diagonal. Of course, the queen's, you know, restricting the king along here, and we've got threats against c7 as well. So, you know, we're just threatening mate, and somehow this white king is completely safe. It's not, there's no way you can get at it somehow. Not within, you need 2 moves to do it, and that's just 1 move too many. So, yeah, I mean, the engines find some crazy way to still stay afloat somehow. But we're threatening something like bishop d6 check, you know, discovered attack at some stage, or even queen c5 check and then taking on c7. So rook b7, queen b7, rook c8, bishop c7. And yeah, actually we end up in an ending that's rather good. Why is it rather good? Because this guy's trapped. Oh. And the lovely thing is that there's this final trap at the end. The 2 bishops, the rook attacking both. Is that good enough? No, bishop h6 check. And after bishop c2, that was curtains. Both in torch stockfish and stockfish torch. So crazy stuff, right? I mean, but the exact variations don't particularly matter. But just you play this move a takes b5 to free a4 and have this possibility of checking the king from this side. But it gets even more amazing, actually, because e takes f4, bishop a4 is played, so threat is stronger than the execution. Don't play b6 quickly, just threatening b6 now. And now an amazing defensive move from Leela, rook g6. What's the idea? If b6, you're playing c6 check. And yeah, not very easy to see how you're getting through. And but there's something that maybe you just sort of noticed just looking at that line. I mean, what is the move that you'd really want to play for white in this position? Well, the move you'd really want to play is the move bishop takes c6 check. I mean, if king d8, then I go queen f8 checkmate. And if you go queen c6, then I go queen e7 checkmate, right? No, because queen takes c6 is check. The only thing you can do is queen takes c6, and after rook c6, you have to resign. Actually, there was a brilliant, I think, Miroslav Perunovic, I hope I'm getting his name right. He showed one of his recent games where he blundered a completely winning position, missing a check like that. But that would be the thing that was how you'd think that, so I can finish off the game like that. So what did Equisetum do? And this is the most amazing move of all. I mean, there's been quite a few astounding moves there. This is an absolutely gorgeous game by Equisetum, but this is the finish. You might want to stop the video here and just see whether you can find it, because it's quite astounding. The move is f3. Why are we playing f3? Well, you know why. b6, c6, bishop takes c6, queen c6 will no longer be check because of the pawn on f3, so we can deliver mate on e7. This incredible, I mean, this is 2 consecutive quiet moves, right? A takes b5, taking a pawn when you're a rook, when you've got 2 pieces for 2 rooks and 2 of your pieces, attacking pieces, are attacked, and you just take a pawn, quiet move. And then another quiet move with the bishop, teeing up a threat, and then afterwards just a quiet move to block a diagonal, and black is helpless. It is simply amazing, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. And by the way, the black king can't castle queenside. That's also important to mention. So, yeah, rook c8 was played by Leela, b6, c6, and now b7. And of course, if rook b8, we're distracting the rook from defending the c-pawn. We've got our bishop c6, queen c6, not check, and queen e7, checkmate. This one's also quite nice, actually. King d8. It's not queen f8 check anymore. It's queen b6 checkmate. Oh, isn't that lovely? So king d7 played by Leela. And then, you know, you could say take on c6 mate. But no, Equisetum plays the even more beautiful d5. I mean, in all fairness, I think, you know, that this is one of the most beautiful attacking games I've ever seen. It's really quite astounding, this one. It really is great. So thank you very much. I think it was the Equisetum engine author who recommended this game to me, and thanks a lot. That was really, he mentioned it a couple of times, and I didn't really I didn't cotton on to it somehow, you know, well, glad I finally took a look at it. Sorry for taking so long, and yeah, really love this game. So Leela plays queen g5. We've finally got a threat against the king, but now takes, rook takes, takes, and now maybe just stop the video and find the win. b8 knight. Isn't that gorgeous? King e6, knight takes c6. Queen f6, knight cd4, and well, Equisetum was a knight up and an attack up as well, and didn't take long to finish it off. Actually, it's only a few moves, so let's Equisetum deserves it. Queen f7, h4 check, queen f4, and queen h2. Very aesthetic. Queen g4 was what I was thinking, but queen h2 is even nicer, with an absolutely glorious win. What a game that was. 1 + 1 minute. I mean, thanks very much for to everyone, and everyone who points out a CCC game. You know, thanks very much indeed. I don't cover all of them, or I've got them in my backlog. You know, I can't get through everything with a full-time job as well. But yeah, I do enjoy it. It's just, you know, the problem with the CCC is that it's just so hard to. They play so many games, you know, with the short time controls. It's just really hard, you know, it's hard to watch them, you know, as they happen. And yeah, you just end up getting overwhelmed by the sheer number of games. But yeah, you know, if you see a nice one, I wish actually that somehow, yeah, they do a like a top 100 or whatever, you know, every month or something, you know, to look through. That would be really a really gorgeous idea, because there's so many good games, you know, but it's just hard to spot them somehow. It takes a lot of time to get them. So yeah, if you see some gorgeous ones, tell me, and you know, I promise that someday I will have a look at them, and if they're gorgeous, then I'm very happy to cover them. But just the TCC tends to be easier to follow because it's a nice slow time control. But thanks very much indeed for this game. One of the most glorious attacking games I think we've got on this channel. So that's really good. For the Leela fans out there might be one. I'm going to cover some more winning games of Leela. Leela plays some lovely chess at the Swiss. So I'm starting up looking at a few of more of those games. But yeah, this one just had to be shown. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed it, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about this channel. Take a look at my new books, and otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.